Good morning. It is good to see you today. Hope you're doing well. Come on with us. Let's continue our studies in Matthew chapter 5 and the Beatitudes today. Matthew chapter 5, at verse 5, it says, "Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth." I wanted to talk about that verse this morning. Most of the commentators, they talk about what that means, the idea of meekness, that it is basically bearing up or submitting to affliction. I would suggest that that's perhaps not the case. They really, when you see that word in Scripture, you have to look at the context. For example, when it talks about women in 1 Peter chapter 3 and verse 4, it talks about that which is very precious in the sight of the Lord, a very meek, and quiet spirit. Doesn't mean that women, it's not talking about suffering affliction from their husband. That's not what the context is. Jesus, when he says in Matthew chapter 11, he says, "Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am very meek and lowly in spirit." The word there, he's not talking about affliction, bearing up under affliction, submitting to affliction. What the word means, it means gentle, or it means mild, or it means humble. And what I would suggest is going on, and pardon me this morning, I'm losing my voice a little bit. Once again, it's a progression. And what we see is that the first two Beatitudes, the first two about blessed are the poor in spirit and blessed are those who mourn. For lack of a better way of putting it, they are internal, more or less. But this third one, I think, is more external. And what it's talking about, and talking about blessed are the meek, it's talking about the humble. But it's talking about those who humble themselves in the sight of the Lord. That's what it's talking about. That yes, you are poor in spirit. It's a progression. You are poor in spirit, and then you mourn, and then what you have to do, as it talks about, blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. What you do is you actually have to come to the Lord. I want you to think about the prodigal son this morning, and we don't have time to get into the account, to read the account, but hopefully you're familiar with it. Well, what did the prodigal son do? It says he came to himself. But then what did he have to do? Think about what that includes, that he came to himself. And I'd suggest we're talking about poor in spirit and mourning. He came to himself, but then what did he have to do? He had to come home. He came to himself, and then he came home. And when he came home, what did he find? As he came home and the father comes out and kisses him and talks about the robe and talks about the ring and talks about all those things, what did he find? He found an inheritance. He found his inheritance. He lost everything. But as he humbled himself, as he came home meekly, he found his inheritance. And here, what do we see? Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. You might, in your margin, it might give you the idea of what it's talking about. Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the land. We're not talking about this earth, boys and girls. We're talking about the new earth. We're talking about our heavenly home. That's what we're talking about. Blessed are those who humble themselves in the sight of the Lord. The Lord lifts up the humble, the meek. Hope you enjoyed this study. God bless you. Be a blessing to others. We'll see you tomorrow morning.